You know what this here leaderboard channel needs more of? Deep, existential, psychological horror? Yeah, that's it. So let's dive into the timeline of Konami's Silent Hill series. Since none of the Silent Hill games have established canon endings, the timeline is a source of confusion and contention among Silent Hill fans. So I'll do the best I can and run you through my version of events. It wasn't easy, so do me a favor and subscribe, okay? Oh, and we're not including the mobile, arcade, or dungeon crawler spin-offs or Shattered Memories, as that takes place in an alternate timeline. Sound good? Then let's enter the other world. History of Silent Hill, pre-17th century to 1976. The town of Silent Hill goes back before American colonial days. Native Americans felt the area had great spiritual power and used it for a gamut of rituals. Around the late 17th century, colonists kicked the Native Americans out of their land, as brutal colonists are known to do. However, an epidemic strikes the town soon after, forcing the colonists to bail on the settlement until a group of settlers returns in 1730. In the late 1800s, Silent Hill is repurposed as a prison colony, then a mining colony, then a POW site for the Civil War. Classic haunted town stuff. After the war, a South Dakota outlaw named Jeb Foster arrives at Silent Hill with his pregnant wife, but he starts seeing the literal ghosts of his past. See, among Jeb's many crimes, he murdered a newborn Cherokee baby. Well, karma comes back to bite him, and that baby's mother comes back to steal his baby. By the end of the century, Silent Hill townsfolk are disappearing left and right, and by the early 1900s, though, it becomes a tourist destination. It is in beautiful Maine, after all. Still, strange occultish drawings are discovered deep within the mines, rumors of monsters begin to pop up, and ships on Toluca Lake are disappearing. These kinds of ominous happenings continue through the century, bringing us to Silent Hill Origins, 1976. Silent Hill Origins follows truck driver Travis Grady as he takes a shortcut through Silent Hill. He nearly runs over a mysterious figure but brakes just in time. While investigating, he notices a mysterious girl dressed in blue and follows after her. When Travis arrives at a burning house, he rushes inside after hearing a little girl's screams. He finds her horribly burned atop a bizarre sacrificial table, but manages to rescue the girl just before passing out. The next day, he goes to Silent Hill's hospital to check on the girl, but Dr. Michael Kaufman assures him there's no evidence of her being admitted. After a run-in with a clearly overworked nurse, Travis discovers a bizarre mirror in which he sees the blue-dressed girl. He reaches out to her, and boom, he's transported to the parallel dark version of reality known as the Otherworld. There, he defeats a straitjacketed monster and collects a piece of a puzzle box-looking device known as the Floros. Once the blue-dressed girl appears again, Travis passes out and wakes back up in the foggy version of the town. He meets nurse Lisa Garland, who informs him that the little girl he saved, Alessa, is dead. Travis is still confused, so he keeps investigating the monster-ridden town and meets the Butcher, a recurring stalker wielding a giant cleaver. As horrifying as the Butcher is, Alessa's mother, Dahlia, is somehow even creepier. When Travis grills her about, her possibly sacrificed daughter, Dahlia acts real suspicious. Then in the sanitarium, we learn that Travis had mommy issues of his own. See, his mother Helen tried to murder him when he was a child, and she was institutionalized. Facing his past, Travis defeats the Otherworld version of his mama and passes out after collecting another piece of the Floros. From here, Travis investigates the Artaud Theater and fights his way through the most bizarre rendition of Shakespeare's The Tempest you'll ever see. After defeating Caliban, he nabs another Floros and makes his way to the Riverside Motel. While there, Travis is forced to face the repressed memory of his father hanging himself, which distorts into a screaming monster. After defeating this literal demon of his past, Travis collects the final piece of Floros and constructs the pyramid. He passes out yet again and wakes up in the basement of the hospital. Once he walks out, Dahlia tells him that he messed up. So it turns out he unleashed the powers of the girl in the blue dress. She's actually the Otherworld version of Alessa. The split Floros was used to keep her supernatural powers and manifestation trapped in the other world, but now she and the other oddities of the other world are loose. Meanwhile, the cult known as the Order is trying to sacrifice the actually still alive Alessa in an effort to birth their god. That's what they were trying to do at the beginning of the game. Travis bursts in to stop the sacrifice, but gets gassed. But when Travis defeats the Floros demon in his ensuing dream, the Floros splits Alessa's soul in two, manifesting a newborn baby and making the ritual impossible. Travis escapes Silent Hill and notices supernatural Alessa holding the infant in her arms. Soon after, Harry Mason and his wife find this newborn on the road and name her Cheryl. Silent Hill 1, 1983. 7 years later, this same Harry Mason is grieving the loss of his wife, Jody, and Cheryl convinces him to take a vacation to Silent Hill. Just like with Travis, Harry sees a figure through the fog while driving and swerves to avoid it. Harry crashes and gets knocked unconscious. When he comes to, Cheryl is gone, so he goes on a chase through the seemingly abandoned foggy town. A bizarre siren wails, and Harry finds himself in an increasingly warped version of the town, the Otherworld, where monsters known as Grey Children overwhelm him. He wakes up in Cafe 522 and meets Sybil Bennett, a police officer from Brahms, the neighboring neighboring town. She gives Harry a handgun, and good thing too. Silent Hill is now completely overrun by monsters. Harry goes to the nearby elementary school to search for his daughter, but finds swarms of great children. In the other world, Harry defeats Splithead and glimpses the ghostly Alessa for a moment. When he starts hearing a bell, he follows the sound to a church, figuring there must be somebody ringing it. There, he finds Dahlia, the Mother of the Year. After she gives him the mystical Floros, Harry then heads to the hospital and meets Dr. Michael Kaufman. We already know this guy is a piece of garbage due to his involvement with the Order in Origins. Finding himself in the other world again, Harry meets her old nurse friend, Lisa, but gets taken back to foggy Silent Hill before he can get any real answers from her. Once he wakes up, Dahlia tells him to head to the other church, and not to let the mark of Samiel be completed, whatever that means. At least Sybil's info is less cryptic. She tells Harry that she saw a mysterious child out on Toluca Lake, so Harry follows this to the hospital to get some advice from Lisa, since the road to the lake is blocked. She tells him to try the waterworks near the school. Along the way, he then saves Dr. Kaufman, who freaks out when Harry picks up a mysterious red vial. When Harry runs into Sybil and Dahlia again, Dahlia tells him the only way to save Cheryl is to use the Floros and stop a demon from sacrificing her. So Harry heads towards the lighthouse and briefly encounters Alessa again. He then fights his way through an amusement park where he is forced to kill a parasite-infested Sybil, in my playthrough at least. Alessa reappears and Harry incapacitates her with the Floros, fulfilling Dahlia's nefarious scheme. See, Alessa sorta trusted Harry. He's kind of her adopted father, technically. Harry is transported to the nowhere version of the hospital, where Lisa realizes she's doomed and tragically bleeds out in front of him. It's revealed that Dr. Kaufman had bribed her with highly addictive drugs so she would ensure Alessa's survival over the years. Anyway, Dahlia soon explains what's going on. Alessa was to be sacrificed, then burned in a ritual 7 years ago, which would bring about the birth of the Order's god. But Alessa lived and her soul was split. This was all seen in Origins. So now Alessa had summoned Cheryl, her other half, back to the town to regain her powers, then kill herself, halting the god birth forever. But Dahlia's outplayed her by manipulating Harry with the Floros and preventing the Seal of Metatron, not the Seal of Samiel's, completion. So now, Cheryl and Alessa are reunited and the god begins to manifest. But thankfully, Dr. Kaufman has a change of heart and stops the process with the red vial which contains the demon-dispelling Uglyphotus. Sorry, Doc, Lisa is still dragging you to hell. The god is still partially formed as the Incubus, and Harry defeats it, but not before it kills Dahlia. Anyway, Alessa gives Harry a new baby, then he escapes through a portal as Alessa gets engulfed by flames. Silent Hill 2, 1993. 10 years later, we join James Sunderland after he receives a letter from his supposedly dead wife, Mary. Silent Hill was their special place, and he made an unfulfilled promise that they'd return. He meets the neurotic Angela in a cemetery, who warns James of the town's danger. She's looking for her mother, but naturally, the town is overrun by fog and inhuman monsters once more. James doesn't care though. He first makes his way through an ominous apartment complex. A bratty little girl named Laura plays keep away with James, and he comes face to face with a pyramid-headed beast having its way with mannequin-like monsters. James evades Pyramid Head, then meets Eddie vomiting in a toilet and taking no responsibility for the mysterious corpse chilling in the nearby fridge. He then runs into Angela again and talks her out of killing herself. James escapes the complex and meets Laura again, who insists he never loved Mary. James is wondering how she even knows Mary in the first place, but she runs away before spilling any details. In Rosewood Park, James meets Maria, a woman born from a wish, who looks exactly like a more sultry version of his wife. They make their way towards Lakeview Hotel looking for Mary, but first encounter Eddie and Laura inside a bowling alley. Concerned for the child, James and Maria pursue her to the nearby hospital. Maria becomes strangely fatigued and needs to take a rest, leaving James to his own devices. James finds Laura, but the little brat tricks him and locks him in a room with hanging, violent mobile coffins. James does survive, but he finds himself in the otherworld version of the hospital with Maria missing. When he finds her in the basement, she chews him out for abandoning her. Pyramid Head chases them, and then James fails to save Maria as she's seemingly slaughtered in front of him. After a moment of grief, James eventually finds himself in the Historical Society. He ventures deeper and deeper underground until he finds Maria still alive, but she's murdered again before he can reach her. From here, we get to learn about some of the other characters. James finds out that Angela killed her abusive father in defense a few years prior. James saves her from a monster, but she's still extremely distrustful. James then reunites with Eddie, and this guy is completely unhinged and acts violently towards anyone who bullies him, the culmination of years of peer abuse. James kills Eddie in self-defense and is appalled that he actually killed somebody. But this wasn't the first time. See, when James gets to the hotel, he watches a videotape that shows he killed his terminally ill wife 3 years ago, either out of mercy, selfishness, or both. Laura screams at him as Mary had promised to adopt her, then disappears. The hotel around James begins to deteriorate as if on fire, and when he meets Angela once more, she finally decides to end her life. Oh yeah, and Maria's still alive, but this time, 2 Pyramid Heads show up and kill her, forcing James to relive the trauma of his wife's death yet again. He defeats both Pyramid Heads and climbs to the roof where he meets either Maria or Mary. Whichever version of his wife he sees, he calls her out for not being real, and she transforms into the game's final boss, forcing James to battle the final manifestation of his guilt. James gains some closure with the ghost of Mary and leaves the town. Or maybe he drowns himself. Or maybe the whole story was set up by a dog. Or aliens. Look, just go with whatever ending feels right for you. Silent Hill 3, 2000. Remember that new infant Alessa gave Harry at the end of Silent Hill 1? Well, her name is Heather, and she's now 17 years old. One day, she falls asleep in a restaurant in Central Square Shopping Center. She wakes up in a demon-ruled amusement park, where she soon gets struck down by a roller coaster. Heather wakes up again, back in the mall, but a detective named Douglas is stalking her. See, the Order sent him to find the spawn of Alessa, aka Heather. The mall morphs into a nightmare, and Heather must fight her way through a new cast of monsters. Heather then meets Claudia Wolf, priestess of the Order, and she claims they need Heather to lead them into paradise. Heather takes elevators deeper into the mall, and unfortunately, the other world. She takes down an epic worm a la Resident Evil 3 before getting back to reality and heading towards the subway to get home to her father. Trains don't seem to be running, so Heather wanders through the underground to arrive at the Hilltop Center. She meets Vincent, a slightly more friendly cult priest, then uses magic words to defeat the monster called the Glutton. Heather makes it to her apartment complex, but finds her father murdered. She follows a trail of blood to the roof where she finds Claudia, boasting about Harry's demise. She's still a little sour about Harry's meddling with the Order's plans in Silent Hill 1. Heather defeats Claudia's pawn, the missionary, then swears revenge on the priestess. Turns out, Douglas isn't really attached to the Order. He's just a hired PI, so he agrees to drive Heather to Silent Hill. In town, she makes her way to Brookhaven Hospital, where she discovers that she is, in fact, the reincarnation of Alessa. Heather defeats Claudia's abusive father, then retrieves the Seal of Metatron, which seems to offer her some protection. Vincent tells her that Claudia is waiting in a church, but she must venture through the amusement park from her earlier nightmares to get there, this time avoiding getting run over. Douglas confronts Claudia about being misled about Heather, but she breaks his leg, hobbling Heather's only real ally. Heather takes on her doppelganger at the iconic carousel from the first game before finally reaching the church. She and Claudia have an interesting debate about a world without suffering, as the birth of God draws nigh, with Heather as the vessel. Claudia then murders Vincent, claiming the Seal of Metatron is useless against her and useless in quelling the birth of their god. But it turns out that Heather had a vial of Uglaphotis around her neck the whole time. Hey, smart thinking, Dad. She ingests it and vomits out a half-formed god, which Claudia then swallows. Gross. After escaping deep underground, Claudia births the god and dies, leaving Heather to battle and defeat the monstrosity. Heather returns to Douglas and plays a hilarious prank on him, before embracing the name Cheryl and moving on with her life. Silent Hill 4, The Room, 2001. The next year, Henry Townshend finds himself trapped within his apartment in South Ashfield, a town not too far from Silent Hill. After a few days, he discovers a hole in the wall that leads to the other world. Through this portal, he views the grisly murders of several victims, marked with strange numbers. Henry discovers the history of Walter Sullivan, whose murders bear a striking resemblance to the murders Henry's been witnessing. Walter was born in the titular room Henry is trapped in, and was raised in a Silent Hill orphanage. Walter was taught the ways of the occult by, you guessed it, the Order. Although he killed himself, his spirit lives on, killing to complete a ritual which will fully awaken evil within the apartment. See, Walter thinks the apartment is his mom. It's a whole thing. Walter attacks Henry's neighbor Eileen, and Henry uses a portal to find her in an otherworld hospital. Henry and Eileen decide to explore Walter's psyche, finding interconnected otherworlds and battling the ghosts of Walter's victims. After destroying the One Truth, they wander into a version of Henry's apartment and meet its previous tenant, Joseph. He reveals that Eileen and Henry are destined to be victims 20 and 21, completing Walter's ritual. Back in his current apartment, Henry discovers the dead and crucified Walter has been chilling in a locked room this whole time. He's finally able to get out of his room, but unfortunately, the town's been transformed into a nightmare. Henry makes his way into the apartment superintendent's room, where he finds Walter's umbilical cord stored away. See, Superintendent Frank was the one who found the abandoned Walter in Henry's apartment years ago, and I guess he wanted a keepsake. Going back to his apartment, Henry finds another void, where he battles a monstrous Walter using the umbilical cord, all while preventing a now-possessed Eileen from offing herself. Walter is defeated. The room seems to be purged of evil, and Henry visits Eileen in the hospital. They both agree it's probably time to move. Silent Hill Homecoming, 2007. Veteran Alex Shepard finds himself in a nightmarish hospital filled with monsters and his evasive kid brother, Joshua. He wakes up in a truck with Origin's Travis Grady, who's dropping him off in his hometown of Shepherd's Glen. The town is covered in a dense fog and nearly empty, of course. Alex is visiting his mother at his childhood home, but she's incoherent and only concerned with the whereabouts of his younger brother. Alex begins searching for Joshua and meets up with his old friend Elle. Eventually, Alex gets interrupted by a wailing siren and, in classic fashion, passes out. He finds himself in nearby Silent Hill and chases after Joshua running about. In a hotel, Alex confronts several monsters, including the stocky boogeyman. Yeah, it's Pyramid Head. Alex witnesses the murder of Shepherd's Glen's mayor, then wakes up in a jail cell back home. He befriends Deputy Wheeler and ventures through the jail, local sewers, and a clinic, where he comes face to face with Dr. Fitch. Fitch has been carving himself up, and a hideous doll monster connected to his daughter finally does him in. Alex defeats the doll monster, then heads to the town hall, where he begins to learn the history of the town's founding members who had deep connections with the Order, including his own ancestor. Alex heads home, where he learns that his parents chose Joshua over him for some special use by the Order. The Order then breaks into his house, kidnaps his mother, and Alex descends into the other world. He decides to head to Silent Hill to confront the Order with Wheeler and Elle, but his friends also get kidnapped along the way. Now, he's out to rescue all of them. In the penitentiary, he witnesses his mother being torn apart and has to put her out of her misery. He eventually follows Joshua to a church, where their dad begs Alex to forgive him for neglecting Alex when he was a kid. Also, it turns out that Alex was never a soldier, but rather a mental patient. And then, Pyramid Head shows up and kills his father. The Order captures Alex, and he learns more of the town's history and fate. See, Shepherd Glen's founders were allowed to leave Silent Hill, as long as they sacrificed a family member every 50 years. Turns out, the Shepherd's family failed to do this, so the town succumbs to evil, and the Order starts killing anyone who refused to adopt their ways. Alex escapes and rescues Elle, stumbling upon the tombs of the founding family sacrifices. The Shepherd tomb reveals Alex's name, not Joshua's, showing his parents meant to sacrifice him and explaining why they were always neglecting him. See, they didn't want to get, too attached. This triggers a repressed flashback. Alex accidentally killed his younger brother by knocking him off a boat in a scrap. This event triggered his mental collapse and led to his institutionalization. Finally, Alex fights a manifestation of Joshua and his guilt as a final boss, then leaves Silent Hill with Elle, finding closure and peace. Silent Hill Downpour, 2011. Around 2011, prisoner Murphy Pendleton is itching for revenge against his son's murderer. He bribes the guard Sewell to get close to fellow inmate Patrick Napier and shanks him in the showers. As Murphy's being transferred to a new prison, the bus he's on passes Silent Hill and careens off the side of the road. Murphy runs for it, evading CO Anne Cunningham as she basically falls off a cliff. Soon after, he has his first confrontation with a nightmarish Void at a local diner. To get out of this nightmare, Murphy takes the Skytram to the hellish gorge of Devil's Pit. An alcoholic tour guide kindly explains that to get to town through this gorge, Murphy will need to take a rail car. Then the tour guide kills himself. He didn't even mention that this rail car is infested by monsters. Anyway, the rail car derails, and Murphy eventually wakes up near Silent Hill, and an ominous radio broadcast seems to be calling out to him specifically. With the help of local mailman Howard, he tracks down the radio station. Along the way, we find out that Murphy got himself arrested just to murder Patrick Napier, but that there also may be more to his deal with Officer Sewell than a simple bribe. He finds the radio DJ, who claims they can escape by boat, but suddenly, Anne Cunningham bursts in to arrest Murphy, though a couple of screamers abduct the DJ and Anne, saving him. After escaping the building, he checks out a local monastery, where he collects pieces of a poem to prove to a young boy that he isn't the boogeyman. But the real boogeyman kills the boy before he can finish. Of course, the boy resembles Murphy's own drowned son. Murphy finds his way to the morgue, where a nun reveals the body of his son, but it's the boogeyman. Murphy adamantly refuses to accept this monster as his offspring. Murphy defeats this personal demon and admits that murdering Patrick and getting revenge in general doesn't solve anything. Murphy now has the keys to the escape boat, but Anne ambushes him, telling him to turn around. He refuses, and Anne shoots him point blank. Waking up in his old prison, he remembers Sewell's terms of the deal. Murphy had to kill another individual during a prison riot. Retracing his steps, Murphy finds himself at the scene of this crime in the showers. He defeats the stalker of this game, the Wheelman, but it turns out to actually be a manifestation of policeman Frank Coleridge, an officer who vouched for Murphy, but was launching an investigation into Sewell. Coleridge was attacked, presumably by Murphy, the night of the riot, and left in a vegetative state. Anne shows up and reveals she's Coleridge's daughter, and she arranged the prison transfer so that she could kill Murphy herself. Murphy then transforms into the boogeyman and disarms Anne, but chooses to spare her. Turns out, Murphy isn't the killing type at all. The truth is, he refused to kill Coleridge, and actually failed to finish Napier, leaving Sewell to be the murderer himself and frame Murphy for it. Anne realizes this and allows Murphy to flee. Disturbed? Confused? Yeah, me too. But the great thing about Silent Hill is that so much is left to interpretation. Let us know your theories about what the hell these games mean, and for more timelines and other content, subscribe to the leaderboard. From indie to AAA, we love the games you play. I've been your host, Marcus. Thanks for watching.